You are listening to the CADDle podcast. This is the place where computer-aided design and drafting meets humor and practicality, with a touch of business acumen thrown in for fun. Jim and Rocco, the owners of Zentech Consultants, the premier U.S. technology consulting firm for architecture, engineering, construction, and manufacturing, discuss the fascinating world of CAD with some humor and some honesty. The CADDle podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the CADDle podcast with Jim and Rocco from Zentech Consultants. I am Jim, your lighthearted and entertaining host, and with me, as always, is my partner,
Rocco.
Right? It's like working with Sad Sack over here. The guy gives me nothing, man. Just doesn't even try. And that's why you all must suffer with him through the engineering joke.
Oh, yeah, because he's entertaining, so here's a joke.
That's part of my entertaining persona. I tell jokes. They're not good jokes, but they're jokes. All right, you ready for this, Rocco? So why did the engineering student leave his programming class early?
I don't know. Why did he leave his class early?
Because he was getting a little antsy. Huh?
Oh, God.
I love it. The worse they are, the happier I am. All right. We've tortured people enough. Let's get into today's topic. So it is actually time to hit one of my favorite topics once again that we cover here on the show. And it is the concept of technical training and how to properly handle it in the crazy design build environments that we all work in. Certainly not the first time we've done this on the show, but I figured it's time about to get to it again. So look, this topic it's a big part of the world that Rocco and I live in. And we spend quite a lot of time talking with probably just about every single client about training their staff, and not just about software training. We're always talking about how to improve workflow processes and project setup and a million other tasks as well. And I think that's an important thing to understand about the word training in its modern capacity. I think because of the inundation of software and technology into our everyday lives, there seems to be a basic belief nowadays that all training is focused on how to use the software. And it really isn't. Look, don't get me wrong. Software training is very important, but it really just isn't sufficient for the needs of a modern, design build firm on its own. I use the analogy a lot that software training it's like teaching a mechanic how to use a torque wrench and a ratchet properly. Both very important skills. But if that is all the mechanic knows, do you really want to trust him to work on your new Prius or, the Lamborghini if you're Rocco? Because he takes all my money, folks. It's not fair. Telling you, so mean. But, do you want these guys working on your engine if they don't know how the whole thing works is what I'm asking, right? And I think that's the issue with only training your staff on the software and failing to address, design and construction concepts or management and control workflows. Knowing which buttons to push on screen to get an output without understanding what that output actually means, it is flat out dangerous to your company. So Rocco, do you see a lot of clients who are still focused pretty much exclusively on software training, particularly for, CAD or field level construction people?
Yeah, we definitely do. I mean, I think we've started to change the mindset a little bit, when they start talking to us and they see how we do it here at Zentech. Their minds definitely change, but a lot of it's focused on that. It's funny because as you were talking, it reminds me of, way back when, my brother went to mechanic school and he learned everything by the book, and then it came to fixing something with the car, and he didn't know where to start. And my dad's like, what are you learning in the school?
He learned how to use the torque wrench. He knows that's a good point. And it's not uncommon in any industry. I mean, it happens that way, right? You need the basic skills are great, but practical application is a whole other idea. And I think that the idea of learning, real world processes in this industry instead of learning about just the software tools is vital. It's an area that I think most software resellers fall very short on. And like Rocco was saying, it's an area that we really focus on here at Zentech. So look, with software reseller partners, like the folks that you probably get your CAD or your construction estimating software from, their main business is selling you software, right? Training is a, quote unquote value add for them, right? It's a way to get you to buy software from them and not their competitor down the street. So they're going to offer it to you at either a low cost or sometimes even for free. But the thing is, like my old man always told me, number one, you get what you pay for, and his favorite phrase of all, which is that free is too expensive for me. The trainers that you're usually going to get from a software reseller are usually younger folks with only a year, maybe two, of experience in the industry, who took some extended training from the software developer on how their system works. And 9 times out of 10, they're just walking you through a pre-scripted book that the developers have endorsed or put out for training on their software. I think, finding a consulting partner who has, decades of practical experience in your industry and with trainers, right, who focus on the application of software and not software itself is the real key here. I'll even say this, right, and this is kind of contradictory to our business model here, but I'll say this: you are better off freeing up a really skilled employee in-house to handle your training rather than working with a typical software vendors. Listen, to be fair, I will say two concerns you kind of have to have with that. Number one, you have to ask yourself the question: can you spare that really, really reliable employee from billable work to train others? And number two, are they going to be an effective teacher? Look, it is important to remember that some of the most skilled technical people out there are also absolutely the worst teachers imaginable. For a lot of folks, they have an almost intuitive grasp of their field that makes them exceptional at what they do. And communicating an intuition is not an easy thing to do. It's something we struggle with here all the time at Zentech when we're looking to hire our people, right? We get a lot of really highly qualified applicants who just are not good instructors. Rocco, let me ask you this: how many of our clients still work with either VAR, value-added reseller partners from a software, or try to use internal people for training in the design build fields, and how do you see that usually working out for them?
Yeah, I mean, it's all over the map, right? But I mean, there's a lot that certainly do, and a lot of times you see the CAD managers, for example, training people, and it's like, great, add something else to their plate, like
they don't have enough already
going on. Yeah, but it takes a special skill set, right, to be able to train people. It takes a certain level of patience, that not everybody has, right? And I mean, a lot of people say that, Jim, you're one of the best instructors out there.
I look at Rocco saying nice things about me today. I will use that against you come bonus time. Just saying.
It does, though. I mean, it takes a special skill set. It's not something that your average Joe can do. I mean, I certainly wouldn't have patience. It's difficult for me to even train people when we onboard them here, and I'm not doing technical training. It's basic procedural training, let's say. So I hope I addressed the question.
Yeah, no, that works. So look, I'll say this: I think it's vitally important in developing and retaining your best people, that you train them on the proper work processes for your industry. Look, it gives them a feeling of being appreciated. It helps with their job security, helps with their professional growth. And most importantly, right, it makes them better employees who can develop your projects and your designs much more effectively. Look, as an example, right? We offer a series of classes here at Zentech that we call From the Ground Up, that focus on both practical understanding of design and build concepts, paired with a hands-on portion of the class where we go into how to use and apply, the appropriate software to get the results you need. In other words, the first half of like a road design session in that series will explain all the different types of roads and what they are and when do you use them and what design concerns should you be looking at and do you need to address. And then the second half of that class is going to show you how to build those types of roads in like Civil 3D. And I think that all training really needs to have both a practical and a technical approach included, right? And we try to focus on that, right? Even in classes that focus on a particular software, right? Even if we do a class like Bluebeam for takeoff and estimating, right? We still talk a lot about how do you apply the tools that we're showing you to real industry-specific scenarios instead of just showing you, what tools there are and here's you push this button to make that tool do this. So, Rocco, why don't you tell me, what are the focus areas in our From the Ground Up series and what has kind of been the response from people to those classes?
Yeah, well, right now we have our From the Ground Up series that's built for civil engineering, but we're actually looking to, in process of developing one for construction, for those of you that listen to us on the construction end. And again, twice in like 5 minutes here, I'm probably going to get a call or text from your wife tonight, Jim, and she's going to tell me, what am I doing? But, this program was actually developed by Jim, and it's very, very well thought through. It's a very comprehensive program on the civil side. It's actually a 20-session plan or program that's been put together, and we take you through from conceptual design to survey, to roadway design, to grading and subdivision design, all the way through to even get into some hydrology and final to construction. So real comprehensive program, and it could be offered specifically for your team, for your group. And we've had a lot of conversations, over the years with CAD managers and managers, even owners of small companies, that it's funny because they come to us and they say, they just don't get it. I wish that they understood it from the conceptual phase, and so that's what kind of inspired this program that's been developed.
All right, so I think you see a lot of the same thing in colleges, right? It's about teaching you tools with the idea that, you'll learn process when you get out into the real world. The problem is that, the companies are too busy to sit and teach, a young 22-year-old graduate process, and that's kind of what those are designed to work with. So, all right, so I tell you what, let's take a quick break here for the sponsors to sell some of their stuff. And when we come back, I want to talk about the training process, right? And what are the best ways to make training happen in your company, all right? So stand by, folks. We'll be back in a minute with more of the CADDle Call podcast.
All right, everybody. Today's episode of the CADDle Call podcast is brought to you by Zentech Consultants. That's Rocco and I. We're bringing ourselves to you. Aren't we nice? So we wanted to talk to you guys today about some of the things that we offer at Zentech Consultants. In particular, we wanted to talk to you today about our offerings around developing and upgrading your CAD standards. We are here to help you guys with all of your CAD standard needs, from ongoing drafting and design support to block and library development, full CAD standards development, right? CAD version upgrades, really whatever it is that you guys need when it comes to developing, implementing, and tweaking your current CAD standards. Or like I said, if you don't have any yet, we can help you build them from scratch. So Rocco, why don't you tell all the good folks how they can reach out to us and start that conversation?
Yeah, there's a lot of information, people, on our website, zentechconsultants.net. That's ZENTEK consultants.net. Or you can give us a call, 866-824-4459, or even drop us an email, sales@zentechconsultants.net.
Ooh, nice. CAD standards from Zentech Consultants. You're listening to the CADDle Call podcast.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the CADDle Call podcast. We're talking about the technical training process today. And in this half of the show, I kind of want to get into the nuts and bolts of how to train your staff. And I know that, a lot of you listen and think, well, that's a pretty basic thing, right? What do we need to discuss? I mean, you decide what you need training on, you hire a trainer, you tell your folks to show up, and that's that, right? Wrong. The truth of the matter is that most technical training that happens today is a dismal failure. And to my mind, anyway, that's because of that underlying belief that so many of us have that it's this 1, 2, 3 process, done, training, check mark, we're finished. And it really isn't. Right? Training needs to be carefully planned, funded, supported, and most importantly, it needs to be delivered in both an effective and an efficient way so your people can retain what they're learning. One of the biggest complaints that I hear from people, particularly management, when we're discussing training, is that they've paid a ton of money in the past for training, and it was a complete waste of time and money. Their people never used anything they were supposed to have learned. And here's the thing, they're not wrong. The problem is partly, what we talked about in the first half of this podcast with, using software vendors, and partly that the training process a lot of people still use are completely outdated and poorly planned. So Rocco, how common is it that when you're talking to people about training that they're gun shy, I guess, because they've had bad or failed experiences with previous trainings?
It's not with every conversation, but it definitely comes up. I mean, you have all extremes, right? I mean, you have people that are like, wow, I if I spend money on to train people, they're gonna just leave, and go find another job. I mean, that's an extreme, I mean, look, you can't make anybody stay with you no matter what you do, right? I mean, it's but it all depends. It's all over the map.
All right, yeah, and like I said, it is something that I see a lot. But again, usually by the time I get down to me, we're talking about detailed training and stuff. So I'm at the point where people have to spend money, and they're like, well, wait a minute. So I tell you what, let's kind of get into this. Let's start with the process, okay? Two things that immediately come up, with people like me and Rocco, who are from the boomer generation, I guess, is that they want to have their training done in person and they want it on site in their building, because that's the way we do it. And I get it, folks. This was the standard in 1995, right? But it is the wrong way to go today. And if you or your company still approach training with those requirements in mind, I can almost guarantee a failure of your training program. Look, for starters, just insisting that a trainer come on site is going to minimum triple your cost. You're talking about food and travel and hotels, etc. They all cost, right? We're going to charge you for that. And there is no actual benefit to having an instructor on site in modern times. Everything, and I do mean everything, can be handled much more effectively and for far less costs, right? Remotely using modern technology, right? The key here is you are still much better off with a live remote instructor so that your staff can ask questions or point out issues that they've run up against in jobs, right? With a skilled person who knows, your specific industry than, even like any pre-recorded offerings, right? Though there is a time for those as well, don't get me wrong. And I think the other issue that arises from that kind of in-person, on-site scenario is, since you're paying so much for that, companies want to do all their training at once to minimize the cost. And I get that seems logical when you're looking at just the base fee, right? But there just is no worse way to train your staff. Look, we do classes here at Zentech that go from 8 hours in length, or to custom classes that can be 100+ hours of contact time. But even at those 8 hour length classes, we will not do that class in one day. We just won't. Right? We break it down generally into 4 2-hour sessions, and we prefer to just do those once a week. Right? The point here is to break your training classes down into useful lengths where the student's brain can actually capture and recall all the information that we give them. Look, years of practical experience doing this, combined with actual medical research by the medical community, shows that anything beyond 2 hours of training has a retention rate of less than 10% of what you're teaching. Where that 2 hour mark, if you stop at the 2 hours, the human brain retains 90% or more of what it's been taught. Right? And the important takeaway I want you guys to get from that statement I just made, I don't mean a 10% retention rate of what you teach after that 2 hour mark. It means your total retention mark for the whole day, 10% of everything. Right? Because the human brain hits a point where it can't process enough of the new information coming in quickly enough. So it starts erasing your short-term memory to make room for this more and more data that I'm pumping at you. Any training that you do beyond that 2 hour limit, it's dooming you to failure. So Rocco, do you still see a lot of people who push back against our time limits on the training end? I mean, is there still kind of that one and done approach that people still think that's effective?
A lot of people come to us initially looking for that, the in-person training. But once we start to have discussions and further and explain, how we structure our classes, it's kind of like, that's an interesting way. Yeah, I kind of like that, approach. And so, we sell them on it. I mean, it does make sense once you think it through. But a lot of people start with the traditional, I want somebody here, or can we do 4 hours straight? And it's just,
Yep.
That's a long time.
It is. It's tough, man. That is a lot to learn, especially on technical stuff, because there's so much going on. Whereas, like I said, for us, that 2 hour online standard that we use, I will say this, it has a lot of other business benefits beyond the fact that it's the best way to have your people remember what they learn. For starters, it lets you handle your training without losing a full day or even more of billable time. I think the biggest expense and difficulty in a training program is always, it's not the fees you pay the consultant, it's the time you lose doing your actual work. And look, it is a lot easier to take a 2 hour break and then address any project or work related issues that came up in that 2 hours than it is to miss a whole day or a whole week and then try to catch up or resolve all the issues that have spun out of control while you were in this extended training. I think that that 2 hour limit also means that your people can go back to work and they can start using what they just learned immediately. They can just go right in and start using that on their jobs, right? Instead of waiting, until like a week-long class is done, right? And then they have to spend 3 more days just trying to dig out of the work hole that their week-long absence left them, right? Before they can even try and implement any of the new processes that they trained on. Learning happens best by immediate repetition. And if your staff has to wait a week or 2 weeks before they can even try out what they learned, they are most likely to forget everything they learned about it. They're just not going to recall it. Whereas if they can get on it the moment class ends, boom, they're right into using that new process, right? And then they can bring questions and concerns on what they did and didn't do and what worked and didn't work for them or a thought they had back to the next 2 hour session, right? We have seen, just absolutely incredible results in terms of, retention and adoption of new processes and tools with this simple limit in how we train students. And look, one last thing that you guys really want to consider here, because it's a very important aspect of any training system or program, and it is ongoing support, right? You need to plan for and provide for the ability of your students to reconnect with your instructor and expert after the class is done, so that the job or the project specific issues that will, without a doubt, they always do, they're going to come up. Those can come up weeks later, but there is still a path for your staff to reach out and get the help and the support and get those questions answered even after the class is over. So that's something you got to provide for. So Rocco, let me ask you kind of two things, I guess. What's the student response, right? For the students themselves that we get from this 2-hour lock training system that we do, and what do we offer folks, or what do we suggest for folks in terms of long-term support for clients after the classes are over?
Yeah, I mean, students are very happy. I mean, I look at our evaluations all the time, and they're extremely happy with the structure. They're happy that they get access to the recording for 7 days after we do the live session, so that if they miss content or just didn't understand a point, they're able to go through it. So our reviews are excellent, and I'm not just saying that. I mean, that's what the evaluations actually show. And then as far as follow-up support, we do sell our tech blocks that are prepaid support that could be purchased beforehand or after the fact, or even 6 months later. I mean, you can come back to us and buy the prepaid support where we can work with you one-on-one. So
those tech blocks are options, right? But yeah, we get a lot of very happy end users for those tech blocks. This is like, hey, I attended your class, I learned a ton, I started using it, but I ran into the problem A on this specific job. And then we can just put one of our techs online with them for an hour and say, okay, let's go through the actual job, right? So you're working billable work and getting that support from that, training expert. So it works out really well, like I said, long term. And it's something you guys, whether it's with us or in-house or however you plan to do it, but it is something you guys want to plan for, right? You can't be just like, I trained you and you should know it and remember it forever, and any problem you should be able to answer. That doesn't work. It's not the way the real world happens. All right, so I guess, one last thing that I want to hit on here before we wrap up today. It's kind of the good and the bad of pre-recorded training. And like I said, Rocker actually pointed out I had forgotten about it. Right? We do give the recordings of the classes for a week after we do them, and that's really helpful, right? Because it helps you refresh what you've learned. If you need that, or if you want to go at a slower pace and pause things, it's a nice benefit. But recorded training, it's something that we offer quite a bit of here at Zentech. So I am a big fan of it, as long as you're applying it in the proper conditions. Look, there are online training systems out there, right, that offer, they call it this concept of, quote unquote, just-in-time training, where you pay for recurring access to recorded and categorized classes that are going to help you address whatever problem you have the moment they come up. And look, to my mind, those are a total waste of time and money. I've worked with them. I've tried selling them. I've tried integrating them into the production environment. It doesn't work, right? Because, you can call it what you will, right? Put whatever nice fancy marketing term on it. At the end of the day, that approach, it is nothing more than a video-based help system. And all software already has a help system built in. Right? It doesn't teach your users anything. All it does is it provides a video answer to an immediate question, right? And more often than not, your staff will never use them, right? Because they're categorized and structured, and you have to learn how to get to the right data, and it takes time. You know what they do? They go to Google or they go to YouTube, because they get better, faster results that were, put out by real people to answer very specific problems that they've run across in their daily work. Recorded training, I think it works well, very well, in two specific areas. And the first one is when you're training people who are already fairly comfortable with a process, right? And they just kind of want to, they want to round out their understanding, make sure that they have, they're not missing anything that would have made it a little bit easier because maybe they taught themselves, or it's been a long time for them. Those people, it's fine. It's good for them, right? And the other people are the ones who just literally have such crazy work hours and such limited time that recording is literally the only viable option. The only time they can do this is at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday night. All right, yeah, there's nobody around to train you at that time. So you can go that route. But here's what I'll say. Recorded training should never be used for beginners, right? Or people who are not comfortable or really don't understand whatever system or process you're trying to train on. I really believe that they need a person, right, to answer their questions and address their specific needs. You know, you don't want a pre-canned set of tools that I think they want and that I think they'll need. Like I said, recordings can be a great tool in the right time and in the right place, but for my money, they will never suffice for a full-blown, effective training system. That's my 2 cents. Anything you want to add there, Rocco?
I'll add 50 cents.
He'll add 50 cents. There you go. Everybody's got enough to go buy a cup of coffee, folks. And with that, we're going to get out of here and go get our cup of coffee, and we'll catch you next time on the CADDle Call Podcast.
All right, everybody. Today's CADDle Call was brought to you courtesy of Zentech Consultants. That's Rocco and I. Zentech Consultants works with design and manufacturing firms to help our clients purchase and implement the software that they need in these complex industries. We provide a single point of contact for clients to buy, develop, and learn the most vital software systems for your specific needs. Zentech strives to be your trusted technology partner from your initial needs all the way through long-term support and training for your entire staff. So Rocco, why don't you tell them how to reach out to Zentech?
All right, yeah, you can reach out to us through zentechconsultants.net. You can email us at sales@zentechconsultants.net, or you can even call us 866-824-4459.
Excellent. We look forward to hearing from you all.